trying to figure out the best place to put them.
So
So, test, or no? Not really getting much? How are my levels? I can't. How does this sound back here? I can project. I have a cup there. I could use it. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
all right, I'm gonna be in that middle seat.
Okay.
I'll let you know when you've got 5 minutes on.
Great. And raise it up a little bit. How does it sound from there? Good? No? It's not. I've got it. It's on. Yeah, I just have to raise it up more, I think. Speaking? Yeah, I think it's coming through a bit better now. Okay. Perfect. Okay. All right. I think we can probably get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to ConVerge Detroit 2016. Right now, we're going to listen to Rich Cassara. He's going to tell us about building a better user by developing security tools design.
Thank you. So yep, I'm happy to be here at the third year of ConVerge. This is my third presentation at a SecurityCon, all 3 of them at ConVerge, because I don't like to travel. I like to stay home, close to home. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so it's not too far from here. And so this gives me a good opportunity to practice, to put together some ideas and work on some speeches and talking to people about some ideas that I have that usually just bounce around on Twitter and IRC, but now we can get it out to a wider audience. And hopefully down the line, I'll be able to travel to more cons and be able to possibly do speeches there. But you guys are lucky to be at ConVerge, where you're the only people who get to see me. So, just a quick introduction. So my name is Rich Cassara. I work mostly in DevOps and security operations. And I've been really into the security community over the last few years. I've been participating in MySec events and other local Midwest security stuff. So the thing that I wanted to talk about was a problem that everybody has in our environments, and that's no matter what you do, you can have the most locked down environment, but everybody has one big vulnerability that they need to worry about, and that's your user errors. No matter what you do, you can have a user come in, a user behavior can screw it all up. We all have our own stories or horror stories we've heard from coworkers about users who will click on anything that pops up on their screen, who will respond to any obvious phishing emails, or people who just put their password on a sticky note on their laptop. The users that think they're doing a better job put the sticky note under the keyboard, but that's really not much better when you have a pen tester that gets in there. So what is the cause of this problem? Is it the stupid users? No, we can't think of our users as being stupid. And there's been a lot of talks I've seen at ConVerge this year already about like trying to get out of this toxic adversarial mindset where we're the enlightened IT people and they're the lowly masses that we're better than. You know, there's already a stereotype of the condescending IT jerk. We don't need to fuel that. We need to have a better relationship and try and understand why the users are making these mistakes that to us seem obvious. So the cause is not stupidity, because ignorance is not the same as stupidity, but rather it's just that users don't behave securely. That's what we need to address, as why aren't they behaving securely and what can we do to fix it? So the shower thought I had that kind of kicked off this idea was that if we think about behaving securely is something like a foreign language. And that, so for people like us who attend these cons, who are working in security and in IT, we're either native speakers of security in that it's always made sense to us to behave in a secure way, to have strong passwords that are not written out anywhere. Or it's something that we've learned over the years and we've become fluent in security. But to other people who don't live and breathe this, who aren't working with it every day, it's like a foreign language where it just might not make sense to them intuitively. So we need to consider that they're not native speakers. They don't understand the same things we do. And so we need to figure out a way to get them to understand these ideas. And we want to if we get the maximum number of people in the world who can understand this at a base level, then the baseline security of your average user is going to be much higher, and we'll have a lesser chance of attacks gaining a foothold into your organizations. So I thought there's kind of two ways to attack the idea of improving our users' security. The one way is technologically we can make more user-friendly and more secure by default software. So that's the improve user-friendliness column here. And there's a lot of companies that are doing great work in that area. Some that I highlighted for this are Duo Security. They make a two-factor authentication, if you're not aware of them. And they make a really simple way to let users have a two-factor authentication through their smartphone. And it is really seamless and painless to end users, so that even the least technical person, they have an app on their phone, they log in, and then it pings them on their phone to say, do you want to approve this login? And they approve when they're logging themselves in. If somebody stole their credentials and tries to log in, they know that somebody's trying to get in, they can deny it, and it's blocked. It makes it's done really well, makes it really easy for anybody to do, and companies that have rolled it out are generally very happy with it. I know the two-factor authentication I've seen before then was really just abysmal for the end user. It didn't work nearly as well, and it was just frustrating, and that doesn't help engender good security. Another company with Amazon, with their web services, they're allowing small to medium businesses, instead of having to run your own server where you might have one or two IT people who may or may not be well-versed in securing their servers, running an operation, and then those servers are just easy targets for any attacker out there. Amazon's made it easy and cost-effective for people who don't need a big infrastructure to roll out their servers in the cloud. And by default, it's a much more secure environment. Amazon's automatically patching. They're watching the network for obvious attacks. They're blocking a lot of stuff that people now don't have to worry about. You can still set up something in Amazon and make it very vulnerable, but you have to try more. It's more secure by default. So that's improving user friendliness. But the thing that I want to talk about more is improving our user awareness and what can we do to make people more aware of security. So we want to think about what can we do to do that. The biggest thing is that people have these they have user trainings. And this is kind of a standard user training where you get like a quiz or a little app or Flash, God forbid, make people install Flash to take a user training to make them more secure, but you make them less secure by putting Flash on their systems. But that's besides the point. The point is so users go through, this is a phishing training, so they have a little fishy to tell you that this is a phishing email. And they go through these exercises, and there'll be a little quiz, and then they'll get a little certificate they can print out that shows to their managers and bosses that they've done the user training, and the bosses can say, hey, we did user training, we're more secure now. But the thing is that was, you took a few hours out of your employee's day to do that, and they might remember all this information for a day or two, but then over time, if they're not thinking about it all the time, they're just going to forget about it, and it's not going to stick. You might get some tiny gains in improvement, but it's not improving that much. So the way that I was thinking about this was that for really getting information to stick with people, you need to tell them a story. Storytelling throughout human history has been how we've communicated most effectively. Even before we had written language, we were a storytelling species. And actually, yesterday, Joel Cardella gave a talk, which was he's starting a storytelling series. It was really fantastic. If you missed it yesterday, I'd recommend watching it. It'll probably be up on Iron Geek's site soon, if it's not already. So storytelling is really important for really communicating information to people. And so, throughout history, thousands of years ago, we had Aesop told stories through fables, and we still tell those same ones today, sometimes in new forms, sometimes very similar to how they originally were. Again, for thousands of years, we've been telling the parables of Jesus Christ, using stories to teach lessons that you want people to really understand. And again, he was highly mentioned in Joel's talk that I talked about. Richard Feynman, more recently, is a wonderful, brilliant physicist, and the way that he taught people was he really engaged people. And he was telling stories, able to engage people on a level that they understood, to communicate complex concepts that anyone could understand. And you see I've got an asterisk on the story part, because the story has to be good. If you have a terrible story, or a story with not much feeling in it, it's not going to communicate anything. And to highlight that, we have this here. I don't know if you've seen these. There's a bunch of, they're essentially advertisements, but they try to make it a story with these really bad comics that they did for EMC put these out. And it's just telling you about their product. This is not going to resonate with anyone about why they should use their two-factor authentication. But we'll come back to storytelling in a bit. So we want to improve our general population's awareness of security. And so how can we go about doing this? And the thing that I wanted to do was to go back in time to the 1950s. And we're going to take a break from security, and instead of the problem being our users having poor awareness, the problem is that people are throwing trash everywhere. So we've got a roadside littering problem because there's a highway system's been implemented. There's a whole lot of new disposable products. Fast food joints are starting to appear. There's no cultural background, though, of what do we do with this garbage. So what we end up with is a lot of garbage alongside highways. And this was a big problem for many years. So the solution, ultimately, was that in individual groups of people who were concerned, and concerned about the littering problems, they would start groups, and they would push, those groups grew, and they became more got more members, were able to bring up ideas to their local governments, push them up higher and higher. They started to get enough funding to launch ad campaigns, like the Crying Indian. who, side note, not actually an American Indian, but was an Italian-American actor. Then we had Woodsy the Owl, and the important thing here was targeting children with friendly cartoon characters, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. And again, continuing with targeting children, we have an entire TV show that is essentially an ad campaign for Don't Litter. And so they had the ad campaigns, and then they were able to get legislation passed, both at the state and local level, where you would have fines for littering alongside roads, and at the national level, where we got the establishment of the EPA, which Richard Nixon signed in. And we were able to push out all these laws and legislation. And eventually, we're at a point today where littering doesn't seem to be nearly as much of a problem as it used to be. And it took a long time because it required, as people grow and the generations come up, they need to adjust to the new cultural norms. And so that got me thinking, off to a tangent, on how people are kind of like programs. And so in this case, we're doing an object-oriented program. And so we have our parent class. And our parent has, I'm sorry if this is a little small, but I think it should be pretty visible. So our parent has some variables, some constants, and functions. And in this case, our parent does stuff. We're going to say this parent class was written in the 1940s. But now this parent class has a child class that inherits from it. And the child inherits the same kind of variables and constants that the parent is able to pass down. But when we have a new class that inherits, it can have new things built onto it. And those things that are built on come from the environment that it's being written in. And so in this case, as this child is growing up and writing its code, we now have added a garbage collection function, the GC at the bottom there. So now the child class has this garbage collection function that the parent didn't do. So the child has learned some new behaviors. But then, furthermore, that child class can have another class that inherits from it, the grandchild class, and this one has a new garbage collector that's improved because from the original child class, it was only getting the instructions for garbage collection, in this case, from its environment, from where it was being written. But the grandchild inherited that in that class, and then it was able to improve upon it from its environment. So it's as we grow and as people age and generations progress, that's how society progresses. How we decide that something that we're doing or not doing needs to change, and so it slowly trickles down. And as the child can then influence the grandchild in addition to the society around it. So that's enough getting off on that sidetrack. So we're going to head back to the present and back to security. So the good news is that cultural awareness around security is in fact growing. And the evidence for this, I'm going to go back to talking about storytelling. In our current, how we tell stories, or mostly how we communicate stories, is through our media, through television and movies. So as far as movies go, a primary starting point for hacking and computer security movies as war games was back in 1983. Almost a decade later, we had Sneakers came out, which is an amazing film, which was a big influence on me, talking about how storytelling can really resonate. When I saw that film, I loved it. I still love it, but it was like something that really, I really took to heart a lot of the messaging from it on security. And had I known earlier that that was actually like a career path, I might have started in security before I did, but I did a circuitous route through IT and eventually decided to focus on security. But, having that background of like really loving security from having watched a movie when I was younger, that's speaks to the power of storytelling. Then we move on to Hackers in '95. Swordfish came out in 2001. So these are, every few years we were having these movies come out that focus on hacking or computer security. But in the last few years, it seems like they're coming out one after another. And it's not just movies. Now we're also getting TV shows focused on computer security. And now they're of varying quality. Some of them are widely derided by our community. But the thing is, for this purpose, for trying to get everybody, society as a whole interested in security, TV is better than movies. Movies, because of their format, can have a stronger emotional impact on a person. But we want to change behavior. If we want to change behavior, TV is giving you more time. You watch a movie for about 2 hours or so, and then you might rewatch it at some point in the future, but you've watched it and you may or may not take away the message from it, and then you go about your merry way. TV shows, if somebody's interested in a TV show, if they get hooked on one, then they're watching it once a week for a whole season. That's like 8 hours of content, and it's being regularly reinforced. And even television shows that aren't strictly focused on security, they're adding elements of computer security into them. Particularly like political intrigue shows seem to have plot lines that involve somebody hacking information from somebody else. And when these ideas get out to more people, there's more of a chance that it's going to click with someone that, hey, this could happen to me. Maybe I could do something about it and change my behavior. So we're getting to the so what part of the talk to wrap up. So it is fun to make fun of when the show screws up how they present things. It's a lot of fun to make jokes and put snarky tweets out on Twitter. But it is important that they're there. That means that there's an interest in the general population for learning more about computer security, and that there's funding in Hollywood. They're willing to put money behind putting these ideas out. So that's a good thing for us, and we need to encourage that. And so, like, when things get popular, if a show becomes popular, it's easy to fall into disdaining things that are popular as being bad, because we like to be exclusive. We like to think, oh, only me and my little group like this thing. Like, if everybody likes it, then it's crap. And that's kind of like, the hipster who disdains, popular music. But like a hipster can come around and learn to appreciate something popular, like Taylor Swift's music. And we need to be able to be flexible like that. So I want everyone to go out and make security great again, except security was never great in the first place. So let's just make it great. And so we need everybody to be a storyteller to the people around you. Tell your stories to people who aren't into security. It's great at conventions. We can tell each other stories about what we've been doing at work, things that the interesting things that we know. But we need to be able to communicate those stories outside our circle and get more people to really click with security. And an important thing with storytelling, technology without storytelling doesn't go anywhere. So we can have great technology that does interesting things, like Google Glass. It was a really interesting piece of tech doing really cool things, but it didn't really have a story around it, a story telling everybody why you want this. So without a storytelling, nothing happens. You get a dumpster fire. But if you take that and you turn it around and you add something, a story, why do I want this product? All of a sudden, everything's changed around. So, storytelling, we tell stories through art. In addition to stories, there's other things that we can do. If you go out and make art, This was just tweeted a few days ago. This is Lopi, who's a fantastically smart guy, and he tweeted out that he wants to make a series of games that teach information security and inform the mindset at the same time. And that's amazing. I hope he gets started on that. I would be happy to help him with that, or, you know, we should go out and embrace projects like these. There's also Hacker Strip is a project where they're making comic books based on the real exploits of real hackers. And that's it's a really great idea for getting information out that might reach a wider audience, might resonate with people, and might end up building a better user. Thank you. I think I have time for questions if anybody has any, or we can. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think that is definitely something that can be. I think there definitely will be a shift there. There's actually they have. I don't know how widespread the program is, but they have programs for high school students. I believe they're through the federal government has a like hacking challenges for high schoolers to try and recognize talents and to get internships into places. So it's something that is happening. It's still like at the beginning stages, but it's something that can improve, certainly. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are, well, so actually at the keynote, I don't know if you were at the keynote downstairs, but Ben 10, his original talk on the security program that he set up at his previous employer was really powerful because I mean, in that sense, the story it told was if you do a better job at security, you can get prizes. But that's a story that works for people. Yeah. You need to have at least enough of a budget, but I mean, you don't need a huge budget. I believe it was something like $100 Amazon gift cards that he was handing out to employees, and that was, you give out one per month or something, and that's only $1,200. So it can be done on a pretty tight, small budget. Thank you.